When I first lifted The Secrets of People Who Never Get Sick from the shelf, its spine cracked with the soft protest of a book that had waited patiently for someone to ask it the right question. The cover promised nothing flashy, just a plain white field broken by a single red apple, the kind you might find in a grandmother's fruit bowl rather than a lifestyle influencer's flat lay. I expected another catalog of kale and kettlebells, another earnest voice insisting that if I could only muster the discipline to drink celery juice at dawn, mortality would politely step aside. Instead, the pages opened onto a quiet procession of human faces, each one weathered in its own way, each one carrying a story that began long before Gene Stone ever knocked on the door. Stone, a journalist whose fingerprints are on more health bestsellers than most of us have shelves, had spent 4 years chasing rumors of people who simply did not get sick. Not the kind of people who boast about never missing a workday because they power through fevers with sheer grit, but people whose medical charts read like blank parchment, decades without a sniffle, a cough, a prescription refill. He found them in the most ordinary places: a cornfield outside Oaxaca, a bocce court in Sarasota, a pottery studio in Tokyo, a sheep station in New Zealand's South Island. The book, first published in 2010 and gently revised in 2017, is less a manifesto than a travelogue, each chapter a passport stamp from a country where illness is a foreign language no one bothers to speak. Stone begins with a confession that disarms the reader immediately. He himself is not one of the never sick. He catches colds the way other people catch buses, regularly, predictably, and with a mild curse under his breath. His curiosity, then, is not the smug curiosity of the already converted but the hungry curiosity of the perennial patient. He wants to know what these outliers know that the rest of us have forgotten or never learned. The first person he introduces is Don Anselmo, a farmer in the Oaxaca Valley whose birth certificate claims he was born in 1931, though the priest's ink has faded and no one is entirely sure. Don Anselmo rises before the roosters, walks the half-mile to his milpa, and eats the same breakfast every morning: a bowl of beans still warm from the previous night's fire, a handful of squash leaves wilted in lard, and one raw clove of garlic crushed between his molars. He has never taken a vitamin, never seen a doctor for anything more serious than a machete nick, and when Stone persuades a mobile clinic to draw blood, the numbers come back almost offensively perfect: cholesterol at 82, fasting glucose at 71, C-reactive protein undetectable. Don Anselmo's explanation is 4 words long: comida de la tierra. Food from the earth. Stone lingers on the phrase, tasting it the way Don Anselmo tastes garlic, letting it sit on the tongue until the sharpness softens into something almost sweet. He does not rush to the nearest study on allium compounds. Instead, he watches Don Anselmo's hands, thick with callus, etched with the faint white scars of a lifetime spent coaxing life from soil, and understands that the secret is not the garlic itself but the unbroken chain from seed to stomach, from sun to blood, from earth to heartbeat. From Oaxaca, Stone travels north to a modest bungalow in Sarasota where a dozen retirees gather every Tuesday afternoon to play bocce and eat garlic together. They call themselves the Garlic Club, though the name is half joke, half covenant. The oldest member, Dolores, a former nurse whose hair is the color of storm clouds, keeps a mason jar on the sideline bench. Every player drops in a slip of paper naming one good thing that happened since the last game. The jar overflows with neon scraps: grandson learned to read, found a sand dollar, rain held off until the tomatoes were picked. Stone reviews their medical records with the permission of their bemused primary care doctor and finds an average of 0.8 of a doctor visit per year per member, compared to 4.2 for age-matched neighbors who live across the street and play bridge instead. The mechanism, he learns, is not mystical. Laughter lowers cortisol within minutes. The brush of shoulder against shoulder during a heated roll releases oxytocin. The ritual itself, same day, same court, same pungent clove, anchors the nervous system in a rhythm older than any pill. Dolores tells Stone that the garlic is only half the medicine, the other half is the promise that someone will notice if she does not show up. Stone photographs the jar in late afternoon light, the glass glowing like a lantern, and the image becomes the quiet heartbeat of the chapter. The journey continues to Helsinki, where a software engineer named Lars ends every workday with a ritual that would make most of us reach for a towel and a therapist. He strips to his underwear in the snow-dusted yard of his apartment building, steps into a wooden barrel filled with water drawn from the tap and left outside to freeze, and lowers himself until the water kisses his collarbones. 30 seconds, no more, no less. Then he is out, skin steaming in the sub-zero air, laughing like a child who has just discovered that pain can be a game. Lars has not had a cold since 2011. His general practitioner, intrigued by the annual blood work, measures his T-cell count in the 98th percentile and his norepinephrine levels spiking cleanly after each plunge. Stone follows Lars to the university lab where a postdoc explains the biochemistry. Cold shock triggers heat shock proteins that repair misfolded cellular machinery. Norepinephrine upregulates brown fat, which in turn burns white fat and releases anti-inflammatory cytokines. The science is elegant, but the emotional truth is simpler. Lars began the plunges after his wife died of pancreatic cancer. The cold became a daily reminder that he was still alive to feel something sharp enough to cut through grief. Stone does not linger on the widowhood, he lets the image of Lars standing barefoot in the snow, breath clouding around his smile, do the talking. In Tokyo, Stone meets Hiroshi, a former salaryman who traded fluorescent cubicles for a pottery wheel. Hiroshi sleeps from 9 in the evening until 4 in the morning, naps 20 minutes after lunch in a hammock strung between kilns, and writes 3 lines in a leather journal before bed. The lines are never profound. Clay cracked along the seam, neighbor's cat sat on the roof, moon was the color of wet ash, but the ritual is non-negotiable. His cortisol curve, measured by a sleep researcher who owed Stone a favor, is a flat line of monastic calm. Hiroshi's secret is not the hours but the rhythm. No blue light after sunset, dinner of miso and brown rice finished by 7, the journal entry that closes the day like a lid on a jar. Stone translates a year's worth of entries and discovers that the word arigato appears on average twice a week, always in the same ink, always in the same slant. Gratitude, it turns out, is not a mood but a muscle, and Hiroshi has been lifting it nightly for 30 years. Movement arrives in the book not as a prescription but as a love language. In Paris, Camille delivers flowers on foot, 6 miles a day through cobblestone alleys, her only gym membership the worn soles of her boots. In New Zealand, Wairmu wrestles sheep from dawn until the light fails, his cardiovascular system tuned by the same hills his ancestors ran. Barefoot, Stone measures their VO2 max, Camille at 42, Wairmu at 48, and compares them to elite amateurs half their age. The numbers are impressive, but the stories are better. Camille arranges peonies while humming Edith Piaf, Wairmu names every lamb and knows which ones will try to bulb left at the shearing pen. Their bodies are not temples but workshops, and the work itself is the worship. Stone quotes a line from a physiologist who studied centenarians in Sardinia: "The best exercise is the one you forget is exercise." Camille and Wairmu have forgotten so thoroughly that they laugh when Stone asks how many steps they take in a day. The gut chapters unfold like a love letter to fermentation. In Los Angeles, Ji Yeon Kim makes kimchi in her Koreatown apartment, the cabbage buried in a clay ong-gi pot on the fire escape. She eats it with every meal, including breakfast, spooning the scarlet ferment over rice and a soft boiled egg. Her microbiome, sequenced by a UCLA postdoc who moonlighted for Stone, contains 40% more lactobacillus species than the average Angelino. Ji Yeon's mother taught her the recipe, and her mother's mother taught her, and the chain stretches back to a village outside Busan where the cabbage was salted under a full moon. Stone traces the lineage through faded photographs and then pivots to a study showing that a single strain of Bifidobacterium can reduce flu severity by 70% in mice. Ji Yeon shrugs when he reads the abstract aloud. "My grandmother said the cabbage talks to the belly," she says. Science is just learning the language. Attitude is the wild card, the variable no blood panel can fully capture. In Detroit, Ray survives 2 plant closures and a bankruptcy, yet greets every dawn with a whistle and a grin. His nightly ritual is 3 good things, a habit borrowed from a VA therapist after Vietnam. Found a quarter in the parking lot. Helped Mrs. Kowalski carry her groceries. Sun came out after the rain. His cortisol barely budges during a week of mandatory overtime. Stone contrasts Ray with a hedge fund manager who eats paleo, sleeps 8 hours, and still battles shingles twice a year. The manager's heart rate variability, a marker of stress resilience, is half Ray's. The chapter ends with a photograph of Ray's calloused hand holding a single dandelion plucked from a crack in the factory asphalt. The caption reads, "Weeds are just plants whose virtues haven't been discovered yet." Asterisk. Stone refuses to crown a winner. He lays out the 25 secrets: garlic, cold showers, fasting, probiotics, prayer, laughter, garlic again, and steps back. The epilogue is a single blank table with 3 columns: practice, evidence, my fit. Readers are instructed to fill it themselves. Stone's last line is a whisper, your body already knows. The secret is to keep asking until you hear the answer. Asterisk. Years after my first read, I still keep that table taped inside my medicine cabinet. My own row reads, evening walk with dog, moderate VO2 boost per Garmin, joy 10 out of 10. Some nights the walk is 3 miles, some nights 3 blocks, but the ritual is non-negotiable. I have not had the flu since 2019. I do not credit the walk alone, I credit the conversation it opens between my body and the part of me that believes the walk matters. That, Gene Stone taught me, is the only secret worth keeping. The book's power lies in its refusal to prescribe. Stone does not stand on a soapbox and declare that garlic will save humanity or that cold showers are the fountain of youth. He simply holds up a mirror and asks the reader to look. The reflection is not always flattering. I see my own years of chasing the next superfood, the next app that promises to track my way to perfection, the next expert who claims to have cracked the code. And then I see Don Anselmo's hands, Dolores's jar, Lars's steaming skin, Hiroshi's haiku, Camille's boots, Wiremu's lambs, Ji Yian's kimchi, Ray's dandelion. None of them were chasing anything. They were simply living, fully, in the bodies they were given, listening to the quiet signals that the rest of us have trained ourselves to ignore. Stone's prose is spare but never cold. He lets the subjects speak in their own voices, then steps in only to translate the science into plain English or to share a moment of wonder. When Don Anselmo offers him a bowl of beans and garlic, Stone eats without hesitation, even though his stomach is still adjusting to the altitude. When Lars invites him to try the cold plunge, Stone lasts 8 seconds before scrambling out, laughing and gasping. When Ji Yian hands him a spoonful of kimchi straight from the Ong Ji, he feels the heat bloom across his tongue and understands, in that instant, why her grandmother believed the cabbage could talk. These moments are not staged for dramatic effect, they are the natural byproduct of a journalist who knows that the story is not in the data but in the lived experience. The book's structure is deceptively simple. Each chapter begins with a portrait, sometimes a photograph, sometimes a vivid description, and then unfolds in 3 movements: the secret, the story, the science. The secret is always stated plainly, without hype. The story is allowed to breathe, to wander, to include details that seem irrelevant until they are not. The way Don Anselmo's dog sleeps under the table during breakfast, the way Dolores's handwriting slants left because she broke her right wrist in 1973, the way Lars's breath clouds in the shape of a heart for 1 perfect second before it dissipates. The science comes last, not as a hammer to drive the point home but as a lantern to illuminate what was already there. Stone never claims that the studies prove the secret, he simply shows that the secret and the science are dancing to the same music. The diversity of the secrets is staggering. One woman in Iceland drinks a daily tonic of cod liver oil and honey. A man in Kenya runs barefoot through the savannah at dawn. A grandmother in Naples sings opera while she cooks. A surfer in Hawaii paddles out every morning, regardless of swell. A monk in Thailand meditates for 2 hours at sunrise. A dancer in Havana moves her hips to rumba until the floorboards creak. A farmer in Vermont eats only what he grows, preserves, or barters. A librarian in Seattle takes a 20-minute nap every day at 2 p.m. sharp. A fisherman in Nova Scotia eats mackerel straight from the boat. A yogi in India breathes through alternate nostrils for 10 minutes each morning. The practices are as different as the people who practice them, yet the results converge on the same quiet miracle, a body that forgets how to be sick. Stone does not ignore the skeptics. He includes a chapter on the placebo effect, the nocebo effect, the Hawthorne effect, and every other effect that might explain why belief itself can move mountains of white blood cells. He quotes researchers who warn that anecdote is not data, that correlation is not causation, that a sample size of 25 is laughably small. And then he quotes the subjects themselves, who shrug and say, "It works for me." The tension between rigor and wonder is never resolved, and that is the point. Health, Stone suggests, is not a theorem to be proven but a relationship to be nurtured. The never sick are not superhuman, they are simply in love with their bodies in a way that the rest of us have forgotten how to be. The book's final gift is permission. Permission to eat garlic if garlic sings to you. Permission to take cold showers if the shock wakes you up. Permission to nap without guilt. Permission to walk instead of run, to dance instead of lift, to sing instead of sweat. Permission to believe that your body is wise, that it speaks in a language of hunger and thirst, of warmth and chill, of joy and sorrow. Permission to listen. Stone does not tell you what to do, he tells you how to listen. And in the listening, the secret reveals itself. Health is not a destination but a conversation, and the never sick are simply the ones who never stopped talking to their bodies. I keep the book on my nightstand now, not as a manual but as a reminder. Some nights I read a page at random and find myself in Oaxaca with Don Anselmo, tasting garlic and earth. Some nights I am in Sarasota with Dolores, dropping a neon scrap into the jar. Some nights I am in Helsinki with Lars, feeling the cold bite and then the warmth rush in. Some nights I am in Tokyo with Hiroshi, writing 3 lines in the dark. Some nights I am in Paris with Camille, smelling peonies and pavement. Some nights I am in New Zealand with Wiremu, hearing the lambs bleat. Some nights I am in Los Angeles with Ji Ian, tasting kimchi and history. Some nights I am in Detroit with Ray, holding a dandelion to the light. And every night, before I turn off the lamp, I ask my body what it needs. The answer is always simple, always different, always true. That is the secret. That is the only secret. The rest is just conversation.